The XPeng G6, or Xiao Peng as it would be known closer to home, is a new family-sized car that's fully electric, new to the Irish market, and wants a bit of the Tesla Model Y. So is it any good? Let's find out. Welcome to Nobby on Cars. There's two battery sizes. There's the long range and the standard range version. The standard range smaller battery has an LFP battery. An LFP battery is a little bit cheaper to produce. That can bring down the price of the car. It's also less energy dense, so you don't get as much range into it. But for the most part, it's absolutely fine. On the surface, it's a very affordable new electric SUV. It starts from €42,000, and this long range version is just under 50. The only difference really is the battery size, because no matter what version you get, it comes highly spec'd. However, there's a couple of things you need to be aware of. First of all, there is a facelift version already announced in China. When that will make its way to Ireland, we're not quite sure yet. And even Googling over the weekend on Reuters, there isn't a huge amount of information on what the facelift will entail. Will it just have a slightly different light bar across the front? But either way, this car has only been announced in February. We're now filming towards the end of March. It gives you an idea of the speed and scale of how cars happen in China, because the facelift version comes out quick. The model gets ditched if it doesn't sell well. I'm not saying that has happened with this car, but it's a different speed to what we're used to in Europe. So do we have to get a bit more used to the fact that a facelift car will come in your model that you've spent all your hard-earned cash on? Something else you need to be aware of if you're looking at a G6 is MSL dealers will charge you a delivery charge of about €2,500 to €3,000. That will include a service pack, however. Not that there's a huge amount of things to be serviced in a vehicle, but the on-the-road price of this car goes from 42 to about 45 pretty quickly. Now, XPeng are a car company that are about a decade old. They took a lot of software influences from Tesla. In fact, some people would say they kind of copied. When you look through the windscreen, you'll see a floating screen, but on the back of it looks like a laptop that's been left on the dashboard. It gives you an idea of the tech that is involved in this car. Autonomous driving is a huge area XPeng have been involved in, and for those of you who like to dabble in the stock market, NVIDIA chips power the processing in this car. On the length of the car, 4.75 meters, over 100 millimeters longer than a Skoda Enyaq. Quite an interesting design. Maybe you love it, maybe you hate it. It rises quickly through this point, reaches the highest point just over the driver's head, and then quickly swoops down towards the back of the car. Obviously, aerodynamics are the name of the game in a vehicle like this, and I can confirm it is very efficient. We'll get on to how it performs in a couple of minutes. The long-range version has 282 brake horsepower, the standard version 251. And they're all rear-wheel drive in this market. There is an all-wheel drive, not sure if it's going to come to Ireland. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure they're waiting to see how well sales of this car do. But it's basically a version from China of a Tesla. This is the car with the low beam headlights on. Daytime running strip over here. The indicators get a sweeping function on the front and the rear. From a tech point of view, pretty advanced. 800 volt charging speed, which means you can really charge this fast, and even over 80% yesterday. I was still getting around 50 kilowatt charging as the curve would slow down. You've got 29 cameras, radars, ultrasonic sensors, an amazing 3D inspired 360 overview camera. It has a chassis track, so you get an image underneath the car when you're driving and parking. Yes, in a car wash, but also anywhere else you like. So tech heavily involved. There's a very fancy charging port that electronically opens and closes for you. No boot spoiler as such, but it's just part of the body and the roof of the car. And again, quickly swoops down over the back. Aero qualities being the priority as always. G6 model designation over this side and just XPeng over here. And it's definitely a 5-letter name that I'm sure a lot of people will be on. Who? What? Electric boot, standard on all versions, 571 litres back here. That does take quite a while to open. Now that sounds huge, right? But Actually, the space is not that deep. Now, you've got a false floor here so you can tuck away the cables and things like that, because there isn't actually a frunk. Now, I think you could probably fit an aftermarket one. There's a lot of space under the bonnet, but it doesn't mean that you have this huge, deep boot back here as much as 571 sounds good. You've got a 12-volt power outlet, flexible boot cover. Depending on what way you angle the seats, because you can move them and recline them, you'll get a bit of a gap here. You're going to want them reclined from a privacy point of view, and there's a sub in this version of the car. So it's reasonably good. It's just not as deep as you might expect it. Don't be expecting a big fancy screen now in the back like you get in the Model Y, because that doesn't happen in the G6. What does happen is plenty of floor space, totally flat. You've got loads of room for your knees and your feet. Good head height as well, despite this sloping glass roof. On the side of the seats, you can hold a lever and basically recline back further if you like. That was part of the closing the gap that I was mentioning in the boot. If you're not using this middle area, armrest with some very nicely dampened cup holders. No tablet holder or anything like that. Two ISOFIX points on the outer two USB-C charging ports down here. And the only place where there's a physical vent that you can manipulate with your fingers is in the rear, because everything else is on a touch screen, including the direction of the airflow up front. We'll get into that in just a second. But to be honest with you, the whole experience back here feels nice and premium. I do like the whiter interior. Maybe some people with younger kids will just say that's not going to work, but it kind of just lifts the mood and gives it a nice premium feel. And there's little flashes of metal and stuff inside the car as well, which also look good. A word of warning: make sure your child locks are on the doors. My kids aren't as small anymore, and one of them was up front the other day and managed to open the passenger door when we were moving. It was a case of, oh, what does this button on the door do, Dad? And the door opened. So make sure everything is locked down. The 360 camera with the 3D, it just makes life very, very easy. If you're trying to park, you can swipe across on your screen like this, get your app center and your real-time virtual reality assistant. But everything is focused on this car being a left-hand drive, so I would much rather if this area, which is very, very like what we have in Tesla, this displays a lot of information that you'd want as a driver. It just would be nicer if you could switch it here, or they could do it in software in right-hand drive cars. From a driving point of view then, so there is a picture of a car. That's where you come into some of your many assistance. For example, driver assistance, so frontal collision avoidance, obstacle avoidance, blind spot, huge amount of them. Then you have your driving mode for lane centering. It's generally okay between some patchy lines that can be slightly hit and miss. On the regen front, you've got 4 different levels: low, medium, high and X pedal, which still creeps at the lights. So we'll bring the car to almost a standstill, but you will have to put your foot in the brake when you reach those set of lights or the car in front, because it will just ever so slightly keep creeping. Eco, standard, sport and individual for the drive modes. The power response also up to sport, power steering, 3 levels of that. The brake pedal feel, there's a sport, a standard and comfort. Definitely sport is just too sensitive, and to be honest with you, I find standard is a little bit too sensitive sometimes. Operating the mirrors, auto hold, hill descent control, like you'd want to spend a few hours with all the different displays that are in this car. There's an awful lot. And then weird things, I can't seem to figure out a equalizer for the speakers. I think it's just you get the sound that they want to give you. As I mentioned, if you want to change the direction of the air, we've seen this in Teslas, of course, as well, but you move your finger on the screen and that will change the direction of the vents, or you can make them sweep, or you can do whatever you want. It's pretty easy. Now, I've set up the app, but I saw people saying it takes a week to get set up. I wasn't able to remote heat the car or even set it up in this part for some reason. Now, that may be something I've missed, because it's actually quite overwhelming, the amount of stuff. 2 wireless charging plates, complete with their own really powerful fans that keep your device cool. Bit of storage down below here, because there's no transmission tunnel. Space down underneath the armrest. There is only one USB-C down here, underneath, you're kind of tucking down and it's over on this side, and it's a bit of a job. Once the cable's in, it's done. Play around with it. You have another separate screen here which tells you your efficiency, your distance, and what mode you're in, and your temperatures and all that. Your cruise control is activated just by pushing down on the gear selector stalk. It is a Mercedes looking stalk, which is weird because there's nothing to do with Mercedes apart from the fact that the importer in Ireland also imports Mercedes, and your windscreen wipers are here. So again, if you like stocks, that might be another reason why you prefer this over the Model Y. You can pre-program your own shortcuts into these buttons. If you want to turn on the lights, for example,
hey,
turn off headlights.
okay.
That works generally quite well. There are some things you wanted to do and it just says, I don't understand. Please, can you explain it in a different way? But
How's it going?
heated seats on.
Driver's seat heating is turned on.
For the basic stuff, it works flawlessly every single time. You have your own built-in CarPlay, so you scan the QR code and it's set up, and then it's not messing with your phone if you like. There's also tune-in, just like you also get on Tesla. And there's Sentry mode recordings, also just like you get on a, if you need it, battery preconditioning is there, so you can heat up the battery to get your fast charger, get your 800 volt architecture, and up to 280 kilowatts. If you have the longer range battery, it's about 215 kilowatt for the standard range. Very fast speeds, in fact, in some cases faster than the Model Y. There's a towing capacity of 1.5 ton also. Haven't seen this before in a vehicle worded in this way anyway. So you've got dynamic range, which is fairly common, and then you've got a WLTP range, which WLTP is telling me at 80% 457 kilometers. The dynamic range is about 350. Now my understanding would be that's particularly useful on a motorway. It'll tell you what actually are you going to get out of the car. But it's interesting to just see that the WLTP figure is displayed. That is generally a figure that is a little bit over optimistic across all vehicles from all manufacturers. I've driven both versions of the car, the long range, more powerful version, and the standard with the 250. That 250 brake horsepower is still more than enough. I mean, yes, if you want the larger battery to get more range, I get it, but 280, it's an extra 30 brake horsepower. Doesn't make a huge difference to the way the car drives. Is it a better ride quality car than the previous gen Model Y? It is. It's got a multi-link suspension. It's not perfect. It still weighs over 2 ton. It still has large wheels on it, and there are times you feel bumps and the suspension is sometimes not sure what to do. But on a good road, it's comfortable. On a not as good road, it's still decent, not impeccable. There are more comfortable cars out there, but I think it's a pretty decent attempt at, again, something that is trying to emulate the Model Y so well. It certainly does it better on the previous gen front. New one, meant to be amazing. So looking forward to trying that, and maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you're not yet, for when we do get that video. As I mentioned, there's lots of ways you can set up the steering, whether you want it to be a little bit more heavy, a bit more firm. Overall handling, it's fine. You know, it's a family car, it's a family SUV. It's all right. Nothing amazing to write home about. It's just fine. The efficiency area is pretty good. It's very cold. I've everything heated on right now, and it's doing 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But on not necessarily warmer days over my week driving the car, aircon off, a little bit of the window cranked, 12 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is really, really good for a vehicle of this size. And yes, opening a window creates drag, but I just wanted to see what a difference the aircon being off made. Tesla is still probably better for overall efficiency. That is just an area that they have cracked so much better than so many other electric cars on the market. The autopilot is all right. You push down on your stalk and it does the rest. I didn't trust it to keep me between lanes because it just didn't really do that particularly well in my experience with the car. These cameras, which cover your blind spot, are brilliant. Great clarity during the day. At night time, they get quite grainy, and that is an area that could be better. I love the fact that the speed beeps. As soon as you do it the first time, you get a little window that pops up on your screen and says, would you like to turn this off? Yes. So you tap that and it says, look, this has to come on the next time you start the car, and that's fine. But you're not going through menus to do it. That's not always the case. There are lots and lots of layers of menus. But that's one area I thought that they got really, really right, is just the fact that that pops up. You also get speed enforcement zone displays on the screen. I'm not sure what they're connected to, or if they are actual, you know, relevant speed connection zones, but they're present on the screen. I do find the steering wheel is quite large. I mean, it's nice, it feels nice, but it's large. The whatever it is, all in, 5 grand or so less for the standard car. It's probably more impressive at that price, about 45. When you get to 50, there's more stuff out there. May not necessarily do some of the things this car can do, like charging speeds and stuff like that, and some of the software, but it might be a more familiar name, which for some people that might be a thing. For others, they're willing to try new tech and embrace what is a car that is absolutely full to the brim of gadgets. Just using that XPeng pedal now at the lights. Still moving, still moving, still moving. That's with auto hold on. So I wonder if I put my foot on the brake. Yes, and auto hold is now making sure the car doesn't creep. But there's no way to fully bring it to a stop without pressing the brake pedal. It'll do a lot of it for you, but just that last point, you do have to press the brake. And when you floor it, yes, it can certainly shift. Good car then? Well, yeah, I mean, it's not without its little quirks and flaws. The suspension could be a little bit better again. It's definitely better than the last version of the Model Y. Haven't tested the new one yet. Meant to be night and day in the difference. Loads and loads of tech. It is still, price point, relatively affordable. There's not an awful lot in the market, BYD aside, with all this tech for this kind of price. The long range one does get a little bit closer to 50, no doubt about it, but I think the standard version, if you're not doing huge mileage, is still more than enough. You've still got the 250 brake. Again, everything else you see in this car is on it. Doesn't matter what version you get. And there are some people who just don't want a Tesla, but do want an electric family SUV. Premium wise, I mean, it feels pretty good inside. You've seen yourself what it looks like and hopefully get a sense of what it feels like. Is it another car that's going to put it up to the European traditional brands? I think so. So let me know what you think. Will we see more? XPeng G6 is on the road. They also have at least 2 more models coming in the short term, including the fairly huge G9. So get involved in the discussion and the comments down below. Thank you very much for coming with me this far in the video today. Really do appreciate it. You might consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already as well. And I'll see you in the next one.